to share that screen. All right. And there we go, folks. We should be live now. Welcome everybody to the room. Welcome to our conversation today. We're going to be doing this every Thursday. This is the first one, and I'm really honored to have the guests that I have today. And the conversation today is about how sales is changing as we come out of the COVID crisis. And so some of the things I'm hearing when I'm talking to people is, one, that they couldn't email people, they weren't getting through. The people who cold call couldn't figure out how to get in with that. And now there's this big hope that the world is going to go back to exactly where it was before. And I'm not confident. I've seen some word on the street that people are like everything in person's happening again. And I do think there is I'm seeing conferences happen, but I'm not seeing the level that I saw before. And so I think salespeople and business leaders or VPs of sales need to really be thinking through, how am I adjusting my process? What's the tech that we're using? And so I brought three people on that are gurus at selling. We have John Alden. He's the founder and chief sales officer at Sales Acceleration. Could I just flub that up more, John? And so what he does, he founded this company, Mountain State Sales Solutions, to help small and medium-sized businesses grow and thrive. He really serves as an outsourced VP of sales, and he'll do things from, I know we've talked to him a little bit about compensation to building process and things like that. Then we have Chris Bozek, and he is the vice president of marketing for Vivos Therapeutics. But Chris has a really long background in B2B sales. And he's one of the people I go to for advice when I'm stuck on something. If I've got a complicated sales process, he's one of the guys I would say that I go to. He's 25 years of experience in complex sales. He works extensively within healthcare, pharma, medical device, and high-tech industries. And so he's just an awesome guy, and I'm really excited to have you here, Chris. And finally, we have Bill Caskey with little wavy things by his name, which we always appreciate people who are willing to use those. And Bill, I have followed Bill on the Advanced Selling Podcast, which is one of the podcasts that he runs for over 10 years now. If people laugh. I think if you were sitting in a sales meeting, you might hear Bill. Some of Bill's voice come out because I've listened to him so often. I just kind of naturally sound a little bit like him, but I'm excited to have him here today. Bill started off disliking sales, didn't like it at all, became a sales coach. He's a guru. He is one of the hosts of the Advanced Selling Podcast. He has his own podcast, and I like both of them. So there is that. So gentlemen, let's get started with our conversation today. But before we do, I have to do a little bit of, I should have had this slide up. I guess I'm getting not ready for prime time here yet. So there are the people presenting today. My name is Mike Black. I'm the managing partner at Page Black. I will do a quick bit. Hello, everybody on LinkedIn. Hey, Brooke, good to see you. If you're thinking about marketing, I want to talk briefly about the problems Page Black solves with marketing. And one is guess and try marketing. What we mean is you try all these different things. You don't get a lot of success. Can't communicate how you stand out. We say in marketing speak, that's differentiators. You don't know how to explain how you're better than your competition. You just have lack of clarity on what's working. We'll help you figure that out. There's no strategy, which means everybody's doing something different, and that changes all the time, which is really going to harm your momentum. Finally, sales and marketing aren't playing nice. We'll help you figure that out. And then finally, you have lots of people you want to talk to, and you're telling all of them the same thing. That's a problem because it's not going to be compelling. All right, I ran through that really quickly because it's not as important. Next, we are going to have a webinar coming up June 8th, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific, and noon Eastern. And we're going to be talking about digital transformation in the customer journey. So we're going to bring in somebody who talks a lot about digital, and we're going to pair that with our knowledge of how to build a customer journey and have a really good conversation. I believe the link will fly in there. If not, we'll be sharing that. Follow us and we'll be sharing that. And then finally, we are going to move into our first question in the Page Black Business Leader Series today. And I'm going to start off, I'm going to give Bill Caskey, he's the pro at presenting. Bill, what are the new challenges you see B2B salespeople facing as we're coming out of the crisis?
Well, Mike, thanks for having me here today with such an esteemed group of people. And I really appreciate you doing this. I think this is really beneficial for your audience or any audience to talk about some of these issues because they are big. And I work with a lot of VPs of sales, probably similar to John, work with a lot of sales professionals in the business-to-business landscape. And there is this notion that I can't wait until it gets back to normal. Mm-hmm. And there probably is a little bit of that where we will get back to some kind of normalcy where we'll be meeting with people face to face. But my daughter is with Salesforce, and if you're calling on Salesforce, you're not going to be able to show up to Salesforce headquarters in San Francisco or Indy and have nobody's there. So as a sales professional, I think one of the things you've got to do is navigate a remote workforce and a virtual workforce, because all the people that you want to call on are not going to be in one room like they maybe used to be. And so we've seen this trend, kind of coming on, but I think COVID just kind of amplified it. So I think one of the challenges is we're going to have to get much better at some of the core disciplines, some of the basic skills like messaging. And you mentioned it in your intro, Mike. I think most companies' sales messaging is awful. It's awful. And what I mean by that, it doesn't message with the customer's circumstance in mind. It messages from our circumstance where we need the business. So we're going to tell you how great we are, and the customers and prospects really don't give a damn how great you are. And so we've got to really make sure our messaging is spot on, it's intentional, it's strategic with the people we're talking to, so that when we show up and deliver that message, they will say to us, oh, okay, well, I haven't thought about that in that way. And so there's a lot more to it than that, but I think that's going to be one of the challenges. We just got to get back to the basics, doing the blocking and tackling, which I hate that term, but I'm using it, that we've always done. We just got to be much better at the core skills that we've always needed to be good at.
Absolutely. What strikes me, Bill, we talk a lot about brand-centric communication, which really just means you're saying how great you are. And then you start to talk about, well, if you're and that's just not compelling, because it's just somebody walking down with a megaphone talking about how cool they are. And if you see that on the street, you don't walk, you run. And I think it's the same thing. You just leave because it's not compelling at all. Yeah. All right. So John, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I think I would echo there what Bill said. I think the other thing to think about too is just the sheer volume of communications that COVID has created. And, back to, the example of how you were talking about the blocking and tackling, everyone pivoted when COVID hit and they started doing, every online tactic that you could possibly think of. And it just created this huge volume. So that concept of, hey, we got to get back to normal, businesses have been inundated over the past year. So how do you cut through that clutter as an individual, and how do you make sure that you're on point is going to become more important than I think it probably ever has been?
Adding to both what's been said so far is I think COVID accelerated a momentum in selling that maybe we weren't quite ready for, but we were heading toward that. And that is a combination of doing things in line, defining what the new normal is. I'll take a little bit of a step backwards. Some of the challenges is sometimes you need to take a step back, both at the direct line salesperson and a sales organization, and really measure, hey, how did we fare through COVID? Some organizations did extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Others set back their business in a huge amount. But how did you fare? How did individuals fare? And how did your population of salespeople fare through COVID? And what can you learn from that and adjust to that moving forward to define what that new normal is?
Right, because the new normal, if you're thinking COVID's this aberration or just the not normal period of time, but we're not leaving that, what happened, what we've learned and gained since then, we're not leaving entirely.
Yeah, I think John's got a point there. I think if you're listening to this and you have a sales team, I think you can assume that there is some uncertainty in your sales team. There's some shakiness, there's trembling, there's some wobbliness about where am I going? And if you're not addressing those things, then the well-being of your sales team is not good. It's not strong. And so I agree with you, John. I think we can worry about the customers, but let's focus it first or maybe primarily on what's the emotional state of our sales team? Because if they're worried and nervous, they're going to pass that right on to our prospects.
Yep.
Yeah, and who's not going to be nervous with the amount of shift in our society that's happened and this unknown? Everybody's like, well, we're going to get back to normal. We don't know what that looks like. All of that. All right. So, Chris, I really appreciated your point. You kind of made this in a conversation we had, 6 months ago. I know you took on a new role. And you mentioned something, and I think this is important for salespeople to hear. You said, I really wish I'd never changed my title on LinkedIn. Can you talk about that experience a little bit? Because I think that you went from kind of a chief sales guy to a marketing guy and something happened and your experience was not good in some respects. Talk about that.
Well, I
that's
think,
people understand.
again, it's that volume, right? Like we all get inundated every single day from B2B organizations trying to, work with us in some capacity. And, I think what Bill said early on, the lost art of how you strike up a conversation with someone and the lost art of quote unquote doing your homework before you reach out. I mean, John, that idea of COVID accelerated everything. And I think to some degree, people panicked, right? Mm-hmm. And the finer points of, from a sales perspective, how do I investigate and understand what this individual's business is all about before I reach out and start that communication, kind of went out the window. I get inundated, right? I get 50 messages a day with somebody who wants to do business with Vivos Therapeutics. Some of them clearly have no idea what we do. Others, they've done their homework. And, like anyone will tell you, the ones that have done their homework have a much higher likelihood of me reciprocating, or anyone in our organization for that matter, reciprocating in the dialogue. So that's not new, but I think a lot of that got accelerated with COVID. And, I think to some of the previous discussion, folks need to think about that, and leaders in sales organizations need to think about that and think about what is our approach and how are we with laser-like precision making sure that we're putting the right message and the right tactics out into the marketplace.
All right. So if I'm going to summarize the answers I'm hearing, and you guys tell me if I missed something, I hear one, do your homework and get the basics right, get the messaging right, understand who you're talking to. All of that still matters, even in this day and age where we can spam the living daylights of anybody with a click of a button. Two, take a look back over the last year and figure out what was working, what wasn't working, who was doing well, who wasn't doing well, and get the lay of the land of where that's been to try and understand maybe a little bit of where we're going, because some of that's going to stick with us. And then three, I really appreciate the idea of check in with your sales team and make sure they're okay. Because if they're not confident about what's going on, they're not going to project confidence in the marketplace. And if they're not confident, then deals are not going to flow. Did I miss anything out of that part of the conversation?
Good synopsis. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah.
First time ever. All right, here we go. Next question for you guys today. I'll give you a minute to think about it while I read it. How are savvy companies, and everybody that's listening to this is certainly savvy, companies and sales reps changing their sales process today? What are they doing differently than they were doing a couple of months ago? We're going to try this look to see if we can do that. And I'm going to say, John, why don't you get us started here? I'm going to put the pressure on you. Let it off, Bill.
Hey, no problem. I'm just going to flip the question. I would say the savvy ones have adapted to their client's buying process. It's one thing to say I'm changing my sales process, but the flip side of the equation is you got to have a buyer, and COVID has impacted their buying process. So to me, it's have you identified what's working now, what's working in the past, and how do I have to modify this, and have a conversation with your key customers on how they're buying things, because I think buying processes are going to change due to COVID.
All right. So what are two questions, if you're doing that in your company, you want to look at what the buying process is, what are two questions you're going to ask, John?
What is your client's buying process? No, I mean
how do you guys buy things? Not your clients, your clients' clients, right?
That, but if you had ran a sales cycle in the past, they've bought in the past, maybe you've flown them into a demonstration environment. Maybe you met them at a trade show. Are you attending trade shows? Are you getting in airplanes? Can I come visit you? Are you qualifying them? I would say, if anything I've seen across the board with the clients that I'm working with, I've really pressed through the COVID times the importance of asking better qualifying questions. Because quite frankly, you have to move off with the tire kickers and spend your time on people who are actually in a buying window.
Amen.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Amen.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think there's a tendency, well, I don't know that this is true. I know I have this tendency because I'm not driving a lot. I'm not having as many networking coffees. I now have more time to do selling. And maybe people like me are saying, well, I've got lots of time, so I'll go ahead and have a conversation, and you're wasting time because you're better off just going and generating more leads.
But I think that's a process change in and of itself when we talk about, that changing of sales process. As Bill indicated earlier, it's forever changed. The landscape is forever changed. If I'm a rep out there and I think that I'm just going to roll up at a building and start, having conversations with folks, that world does not exist anymore. So I think, when we talk about the savvy ones, really understanding how to use social media, how to use examples of like what we're doing here today to warm up those audiences and start that engagement process, and then move that into some sort of live interaction are going to be the ones that really make hay as we move forward here.
All right.
Can I share on that? Yeah, Chris,
Absolutely.
I think you're exactly right. When I look at the buyer journey from the time they don't know they have a problem and they don't know they need you all the way to the end where they're shelling out big bucks to have you, there's a whole lot between those times. And I think sales professionals in B2B have relied upon their selling skills when they finally have a meeting with somebody, virtual or otherwise. But the problem is that it's all the stuff up front before the meeting ever occurs that's where you're positioning yourself, you're getting your message right. I've got a client who's in the oil drilling business of all things, and he was trying to explain his business to me. I don't understand it, don't need to know it. But I said, what's the biggest problem your customer has? And he told me, and I said, have you ever published a video on exactly that problem? And he said, no, I never thought about it. I said, well, if you want to start the journey somewhere, someone's going to be searching for an answer to that problem. Why don't you be the one that has the answer to that problem? Is that the sales process? Probably not. It's in that gray area between marketing and selling. But B2B salespeople had better be understanding how to start that journey. And sometimes you don't start it with a phone call. You start it with a LinkedIn video or an article or a webinar or panel discussion like this. There's lots of different ways to start it. But if your mind is focused on, I'm going to bang out 100 more cold calls today, you can't scale that. And plus, people don't want to talk to you. Have we not recognized that? People don't want to talk to salespeople unless you have something that might be valuable for them, like a course or a video or a PDF or something. Then they'll talk to you.
Right. That's exactly right.
Building on that, the assumption that all salespeople or sales organizations can make today is that the basic information about your product is known.
It's known.
So when they do decide to talk to you and you read off your sell sheet, you've missed the mark.
Right. You don't need,
And so the savvy ones know that, Mike. They have an understanding that they have to come ready and prepared to understand the pain points in their business and understand the value proposition that sells that helps resolve those issues that the potential client is facing.
All right. Yeah. Before I summarize, I'm going to double down, and you guys can comment as well. But I'm just going to say, I'm looking at you, people that are watching this, and saying, if your people that are your buyers don't know about your product and that information is not out there, you have a huge opportunity, and call me today. Because because it's just the truth. Because we can definitely help with that, because you have an opportunity and it will not be here forever. All right. Jokes aside, other comments before I kind of summarize? Anything you guys want to add?
No, I would just say that I think the sales process really must include some type of an unbiased assessment for B2B salespeople, so that when they call you up, you say, look, here's how we work. First off, we do an assessment or survey or whatever you want to call it, but that's how we know whether we can help you or not. That survey may turn up that we can't help you, and we'll tell you where to go to get that help. You've got to have some kind of an assessment. It can't just be you chirping all the features and benefits of what you do. People don't want to hear that crap, but they would like to have you come in and do a thorough examination of their situation so that you can help them decide whether you have a solution or not.
Yeah, if I were to summarize all of this as a theme, it really comes down to sales traditionally really does look at, well, how do we, if we have the meeting, what is the skill set that's required to get that meeting, and then move it forward and move it to the next stage and finally close, and whatever you're doing with that. And really, I'm hearing this theme of salespeople need to engage sooner and earlier in the process in terms of that. And they're going to have to collaborate with marketing when they're doing that. So that's definitely really important. And I will tell you that our company has grown significantly throughout COVID, and it's because I'm the salesperson and the boss, but the marketing. So therefore, the team has to work with me. But no, really, I collaborate with our marketing department very well. They collaborate with me, and that's been just an enormously powerful thing for us. And so if you're not, salespeople are out there, if you're not buying lunch for the marketing team and building that relationship, Chris is liking this, since he's now he's crossed over to the evil side, the dark side, and is now in marketing. No, if you're not, then you should be. And that's a key piece. Our last one was actually on how marketing can influence sales. So that's good fun. All right, let's move forward. And I forgot to change my slide. Let's go pop over here. We'll get our next question. All right, and I think this is interesting, is that what's the new technology that sales reps should either be following or learning about? What should they learn? And I'll preface this with, I have seen, working with some of our clients to do some prospecting, I have seen more of an incidence. I believe this is really related more to concerns about ransomware and cybersecurity. But if your email isn't on the approved list and you're doing email marketing, you're not getting in. They'll just flat out refuse your email. And then I actually reviewed my spam folder today, and I got this, and I didn't even realize it was in there. All these people are like, hey, meeting at noon, Mike? All these like 50 different emails with these calls to action that were clearly just kind of mass spammed out, that they can help me. In fact, we rebranded, and I had one from the same guy that was to my old company with my old company name in the subject. And now I had the exact same email with my new company name. And I was like, oh, he knows who I am. I exist. So that said, I'll give you guys, now you've had a minute to think, what is the tech that you would follow and think about? And Chris, you're the newest, you're actually out of the market with this right now, but what would you be looking at? Or maybe you can think about this from the receiving end. What's the tech that you think people should be using?
Yeah. So when I think about technology, not necessarily a specific platform or a specific tool, but what I would be looking at, and what interests me from a marketer standpoint or from a business development standpoint of someone coming into our organization, is how are they connecting with me virtually, and how are they moving that conversation through the sales process? So what I mean by that is, if we take a step back to a little bit of the previous conversation that we were having in terms of the sales game is never going to be the same, right? So yeah, everybody's got a CRM platform, and yeah, everybody's got a marketing hub platform, and they're all doing the email things and things of that nature. What everyone is still not doing, and Bill mentioned this earlier, is really good video, and changing the paradigm in terms of how I'm communicating with people earlier on in the process. So from a sales perspective, I would be looking at anything that is help me going to get a head start on that process, that is going to enable me to reach out to organizations in a different way, assuming that the environment moving forward is now always going to be a hybrid, right? I may be able to eventually get a meeting with someone, but in order to get there, it's going to require that if I'm doing an analysis, or if I'm presenting on something, or if I want them to understand something about my organization or even about me personally, I've got to have a really good way of communicating that, and a good way of communicating that that can be customized to the different people that I want to talk to.
Boy, you're making me, there's two things I have to say on that. One is just a direct question. Is that there's a small number of salespeople that use something like, I think Bill talks a lot about co-video. I've used BombBomb. Those videos where you can actually have a video conversation with that one person. You can say, hey, John, da, 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 da.
Yep.
Are those something you receive? And if so, do they stand out?
I'm not receiving enough of them. And if I were receiving them, yes, I do believe that they would stand out. I've personally used those in the past, and used them successfully. And so, yeah, I do think that, to move the needle you have to separate yourself from the herd of all the other clutter that's coming into an organization.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'd like to just build on that too. It really goes around, relevant communications. And Chris talked about, you got your marketing hub, you have your CRM, you have marketing, but what information are you gathering, salespeople? And then what are you doing with that information?
Yeah.
And how does that play into your keep warm drip campaigns? How do you make the communications more relevant? Especially, Chris, if you could tie video into that, you're moving the ball down the field a little bit faster than your competitors, probably.
Yeah.
But usually those three things aren't connected.
So on one of the recent ones we did, we had a CEO of a fairly large company. I think they do about $100 million a year. And he, of course, he's getting just nailed with stuff all day long. And his comment was and I think this was really more, he was thinking about what his team needs to be doing is how do you scale communications but in a personalized way? And that is the challenge. That's what you're talking about a little bit with the video and what you're talking about there of the drip campaign and making it personal. And so it's really, I'm going to go back to that collaboration between sales and marketing, because if marketing is creating great pieces that the salespeople can then deliver, and maybe they're delivering it on video, maybe they're doing it in person, maybe they're doing it on a call, there's still that collaboration where they're going to stand out, is my thought. So I like that. All right, Bill, what are your thoughts?
Oh boy. I think salespeople need to figure out how to use video on the phone to effectively get in front of people at scale. But I also feel like sometimes we use tech as an excuse. Well, I don't know how to use video, or I got this new video system. I'm gonna just blast out some messages, and it's like, wait a minute, the message, excuse me, the message is the thing you need to be concerned with. So yes, tech plays a part in it, but when you do reach out to that person, how do you sound? Do you sound needy? Do you sound attached? Do you sound desperate? Or do you sound like you're a resource and a problem solver and somebody who's really helpful? So I think the tone of the message itself, no matter what the tech is, excuse me, has still got to be right. And I get these bomb co-video, I get direct messages on LinkedIn, and they're all terrible. They're all terrible. Hey, Bill, John Smith here. Love to catch 30 minutes on your calendar sometime. Give me a call. Let me know. Well, who is this dude? So I think your messaging, that's why I go back to messaging, and I know you do too, Mike, is what is the message that we're going to be sending out, whether it's video, audio, LinkedIn, articles, whatever it is. If you don't have that right, you can have the most awesome tech in the world. It doesn't work.
So the other half of that is you kind of alluded to your previous answer around how confident your sales team is, because that, especially in today's market, where if you're on video and you're not confident or you're not able to project confidence, you're just not going to stand out, or even worse, they won't engage. What are your thoughts about that?
Me?
Yeah. Sorry. I was looking at you. Can't you tell?
Well, yeah. I mean, you and I have talked about the whole confidence thing. I think you gotta be careful. I'll probably take a little issue with that. I think the more overconfident you are and the more dynamic, the more it scares the hell out of people. So I think you've got to be real. I think you've got to be able to say in your video, look, I saw your name on LinkedIn. I do this. I help companies do this. I have no idea if I would be helpful for you, but I'd be happy to have a phone call sometime. There's no obligation. I'm not pitching you, but I want to see if there's anything I can do to help you. If there is, great. If there's not, great. That's the tone that has to be in those messages. I'll be more likely to call that person back if I feel like I'm not going to get pressed on. Now, if you're going to deliver that message, you cannot press people. You cannot pressure them.
Yeah.
1 minute into the call, you can't say, well, it sounds like there's a good fit. Let's meet next week for coffee. You can't do that. You have to be true to your word. This is not a sales call. It's merely just exchanging information.
Yeah, so that just sparks another conversation for me, and I don't know if we'll have time. Yeah, we do a little bit of time. So all three of you, how salespeople are known to be pushy. Bill just kind of stated his position that you shouldn't be pushy, or at least if you say you're not going to be pushy, you shouldn't be pushy. I've watched other kind of sales gurus talk about how pushy they can be. And a guy on LinkedIn was talking to me yesterday, and he offered me something And I said, no, thank you. I was polite. I said, just look, no, that's not of interest. And then he had to go, look, I don't want to be pushy, but I'm going to be pushy and do this. I said, look, don't make me say no again. I don't have, why are we even connected if I have to sit there and say no to you 2 times? And I've had people actually insult me, which is obviously not helpful. What are your thoughts, John? I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
it's a hard balance.
Salespeople are paid to make sales. And that's the reality of it is. And when you get a pushy salesperson, I tend to believe if I get put in that environment, they just probably haven't done everything that they should have done in their sales process to earn the right to ask for the business.
Right.
And if you've done everything that and you've qualified them and you've taken them through the process and you have a good ROI and you get everything that you're supposed to do, checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. Yeah, you do have the right to ask for the business. Now, sometimes there's a saying out there, an answer is better than no answer, meaning the buyer has to say yes or no. And usually that's when the selling begins. But I think if they come across pushy, they probably haven't done the work.
Yep.
And that's their only
it's their only tool
they had to fall back on.
It's a weapon.
You got to earn the right. You got to build the relationship. You have to do the homework. And, I think the good ones know when to be pushy, but they've earned the right to do so, right? John, just as you said, they've gone through the whole process.
All right.
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys, and especially John, when you talk about you haven't done the work if you're relying and you're resorting to some kind of tactic of pressuring, you need to make a decision before 9 o'clock tomorrow, or I can't let you have this. I mean, we're so far past that. Here's the thing I think salespeople need to be really, really good at today is explaining the offer. Explaining the offer of what it looks like to work with you. Be able to say, look, in the event we decide to do something, let me tell you what it looks like to work with my company and with me. Let me share with you some of what's going to happen if you say yes, or if we engage. If you explain the offer well and really explain it well, you don't have to be pushy. The person either wants it or they don't. But it's when we don't explain the offer well and they give us objections, that's when we get frantic and get emotional and get attached and we get pushy. You suck at explaining the offer if you're getting that stuff at the end. So I really get back to all this stuff that happens in the 11th hour is a problem that happened in the first hour. It's where it all begins. The first time you have a conversation, if you're going to be pushy, that person knows exactly what the other 11 hours are going to look like.
And they're probably not engaging because it's not
engaged.
comfortable.
And they'll say things like, oh yeah, John, send me a quote. This sounds really interesting. Send me a proposal. Boom, you're dead. You're dead.
That's right. Yeah, because who says that and means it, right? So if I'm summarizing our response around what salespeople need to be thinking about of tech, there's this theme of how do we engage virtually? How do we leverage tools like video? And I like that especially with the goal that if they know who you are before you've had your first conversation, they feel like they know you a little bit because you've been in front of them so much. That's just, how can that be bad? They've already contacted you on top of that. The piece I will add that will not be popular with salespeople, and I'm sorry for saying this, is your CRM. And I know that's not a new tool, and I know everybody hates entering data. This is supposed to be the year that they're going to automate data. We'll see if that actually happens. But if you're not getting that data in there, then and you're not looking and analyzing that data, you're missing out on opportunities.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that if you go review and you go look back, you're going to find missed opportunities of people you could have engaged with. There are deals that you lost that you could follow up a year later, and it turns out the other vendor wasn't great. There's all sorts of opportunities in there if you just pay attention to and use your data right. But then again, I'm a half marketing guy, so what do I know? Either a lot or a little. You'll have to decide. All right, let's move into our next question. And I think this is the one I'm actually really excited. I'm getting my notepad out to take answers. And that is, what skills do people need to develop to thrive over the next 12 to 24 months? And one of the reason I'm asking this question is the way I think about what I'm doing with my time is that I'd love to learn. I could learn marketing is such a vast field that I could spend time learning just so much. I could learn 24/7 and starve to death. And so the approach that I have is what's critical for me to learn in the various areas of my job. And one of my areas of my job that is really important is sales. And so I'm curious to see the answers. And I think, Bill, let's start with you. What are your thoughts?
I just wrote down a few things here. You didn't give me much time to write down 5 things, so I just got 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this. What are the skills people need to be better at in now and going forward? I think I just said it earlier, being able to explain what it looks like to work with your company. We get down to the 11th hour and we haven't explained to our buyer what it looks like to do business with us. And now they're supposed to pull the trigger and hope that everything's going to work out okay. And we always think, well, if they have enough pain, they'll want to work with me. That's bull. They can have a lot of pain, but if they don't know what it looks like to work with you, they probably won't. So your ability to explain how you work. Number two, I think getting to the true issue, and you can call it pain or you can call it needs. What's the real issue that the customer has that they're reaching out to you or they're hoping you can solve? I think salespeople vault over that and they go right for the close because they know that's how they get paid. And they don't ever get to the true real issue. It's hard for me, and I teach this stuff, but you have to discipline yourself too. So when your manager says to you, well, Chris, what happened in that call? Does he have any problems? Yeah, he's got a few problems. Well, what are they? Well, they kind of like to find a better way to blank. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
That is not a problem. So salespeople have to be really curious. They've got to remove their ego from it and get very focused on what's the problem you have, because a lot of times the customer doesn't know the problem they have. Well, if you ask them what's your biggest problem, they're only going to tell you what they know. What about the 90% of the problems they don't know they have that they have? Okay, I'm out. Right, Ryan Seacrest, I'm out.
All right, John, let's have you follow that. How's that for pressure?
Yeah, well, I just like to add on to it a little bit. Sales organizations and salespeople in general should always be working under the premise that they need to hone their craft. Yeah. Use a covey term, sharpen the saw. In one area, I think adding to what Bill was saying is they need to work on their storytelling. In a way that aligns the client's challenges with their value prop, but everyone likes a good story, and if you have the ability to communicate in a way that encompasses the client's challenges, your value prop with the results, what Bill was saying, what it's like to do business with them in a story that makes them feel comfortable and non-threatening, well, you're selling without even the client feeling that they're being sold.
I like to talk about tenacious curiosity as a sales rep. Whether you're honing the craft, whatever, you have to be tenacious and you have to be curious. And listen, I carried a bag for, Bill knows this, for 20 years. And I think one of the things that salespeople miss a lot is the perceived notion that if they get to one single person in an organization, that person is going to be able to tell them everything that they need to know and or be able to say, yes, let's do this. When the reality is you have to be curious and talk to everybody. And it goes back to what Bill said earlier in that you have to really know and you have to really understand to uncover what the true issues are. And the only way to do that is by having conversations all over the place. And to do that now in the new environment where we're half in person and half virtual or whatever is going to take a new skill set of building relationships, some of which may be completely virtual and some may be real. So, I think those are all things that in the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see evolution on and things that salespeople should be thinking about right now.
John, I was thinking when you said the ability to tell stories, I think that's so important. Have you ever heard so much discussion about stories and so few stories? I mean, everybody's talking about, we got to tell stories, got to tell stories. I haven't heard a good story in the last 2 years, and I'm begging for one. But we're not good at, you're right, we're not good at crafting them. We tell them in a wing it sort of way instead of really saying, okay, I'm going to write this story down. I've got a client who came to me, they had this problem, we fixed it, their life is amazing now. Write the frickin' story down, get it on paper, document it, practice it. So when you get in front of a prospect, you're not winging it. And the last thing I would say here is when I think of the kind of the ultimate skill, guys ought to write this down. This is the ultimate skill for all sales professionals, regardless of your business. You've got to create the atmosphere where they want what you have worse than you want what they have.
That's right.
And if you can do that, and that requires a lot of storytelling, like John said, a lot of things, Crystal, if you can create the atmosphere where they want to buy worse than you want to sell, you are in command of the process then. If you don't, there's going to be that uphill battle and back and forth and objection handling and 11th hour and discounting and 12% close rate. So it's a lot easier said than done, but that should be what you're pointing toward.
And if you don't mind, Michael, I'd just like to take that up a level or 2 levels to your first line managers or your senior sales leaders. With the storytelling, it's the same thing. I've sat in kickoff meetings where the president of the organization with 122 slides in a PowerPoint deck put everyone to sleep. And I've been in ones where the guy had just a little note card. I wrote some thoughts down on the plane out. Yeah. And I just told stories for an hour. And I would tell you the latter was more impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And the way you lead is the way your people are going to sell is a piece of that for sure. There's research on that that's related to a previous life. So what's interesting to me is if you take all of these together, the skills you talked about almost unanimously had very little to do with COVID, very little to do with anything. They were all skills of how do you relate to people. And Chris kind of edged into this idea that it's virtual. And that's what you really have to figure out is how do you use all these old skills, one, continue to hone them, get better at them because we all can improve. But 2, how do you do that virtually? So that's fascinating to me. All right, we are going to move on to the 5th and surprise question. And that is, and Bill wasn't ready for this. Everybody else got a bonus because I forgot to let Bill into the meeting. Sorry, Bill. But first, next week, we're going to do another LinkedIn Live. And this one is how business leaders can prepare for inflation. So same time, same place. It'll be here on LinkedIn on my channel. And we have a CFO, another salesperson, and then also, I'm trying to think, a CPA are all coming in to talk about what can you do as a business leader when obviously inflation's in the news. We're seeing supply chains are becoming more expensive. Your costs are going up in terms of supply chains, everything else. What do you do? And so that drives my next question for all of you. And that is, I'm hearing on the street, I talk to people in manufacturing, their costs are going up. Steel is up, eggs are up. And so as a salesperson, you need to start thinking about how am I going to talk to my customers and future customers about raising prices. And so, John, you had the first shot. Let me figure out where the button is to make us all go on the screen. John, you had the first opportunity to look at that. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, price increases are a way of life. I mean, it's happening, and it seems like it's happening at an expedited rate here. As a sales leader, I always thought when we knew a price hike was coming, we leveraged that to bring in more deals. How do you figure that out? And if you're the person putting those price increases in effect, give your sales organization a little runway to get some deals done. But it's just the way of life. And if you're not able to say take advantage of that or leverage that in the short term, in the long term, you're just going to go back to everything we talked about in the last hour. You're going to have to hone your skills and deal with the price increase.
Yeah,
there you go. Totally fair. All right, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would echo a lot of what John said there. I mean, I think we kind of, in some ways, answered that question and everything that we were just talking about, right? I mean, it's you're going to have to make sure that the value proposition, and it sounds cliche, but if that is on point and you've done all of the work, a lot of times price doesn't really make any difference, anyways. All
right. This is anticlimactic, but there we go. Bill, I gave you an extra minute and a half to think about that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you have to tell your top customers it's coming. We all know it's coming. You don't put $8 trillion into the economy and not expect inflation. And that's not a political thing because both parties have done it. But I think you have to say, look, your CEO needs to get on a video and say, look, guys, here's what we're looking at. Next quarter looks good. Next quarter looks good. I anticipate some rise in costs over the next 3 months. I don't have any news for you now. I just want you to get ready. I mean, something like that, at least you're over communicating and don't make the first communication the 7.9% price increase. Because I used to do that in the wire business. Copper would fluctuate wildly. and we would never let our top clients know it was coming. They'd get a frickin' FedEx letter, and people would get so bent out of shape. Like, you couldn't even call me about that. Well, truth is, we were all scared to death to call people and tell them. But it's not a surprise for people today. Should not be a surprise. You can't pump that much money in and not have inflation. So I would just warn people up front, tell them it's coming. I don't know what it is yet. You need to be prepared. You're a top client. That's why we're reaching out.
Fair. Yeah, what I'm taking away from this is a little bit of everything is that if you don't have a process to discuss this, you need to build a process to discuss this, because it's not only just now. Prices are going to go up over the future anyways. So why are you not talking about that all the time? And why don't you have a schedule? Have the confidence to engage early, and also give your marketing. I'm going to add marketing to this because marketing can help with this as well. Give them 3 to 6 months notice on this increase so that you can build a campaign.
Yeah.
You can begin to hammer on your value, demonstrate your value before you're saying, hey, it's an extra X number % every year. All right. So that is the last question I have for you guys. And we are now at 12:45. We're not seeing questions roll in. I forgot to ask for them. Any thoughts or questions you guys have for each other, or comments? And if not, we're going to call it a quits for the day. And no pressure. Sometimes they're there. I didn't ask this part in advance.
It's been a really good conversation. I think we've got 3 people who bring very different skill sets and perspectives to it. And unfortunately, it's not like you do this and then you do this and then you do that. It's not that kind of thing. It's every company is different. But I think there was a lot of really good tips and strategies here today that if people take 2 or 3 of them, they can really make a difference.
I agree with that. All right.
It
John,
was
or
nice
Chris,
to be on a webinar like this where the salespeople outnumber the marketing people. That was
Yes, it is.
That's 3. I'm like half and half. So
Yeah,
it's technically
2.5
3.5
to 1.
us against half me.
That's awesome.
All right. Chris, anything on your end, or I'm going to cut us
No,
loose for
thank
the
you. I
day?
think this has been great. Appreciate the opportunity, and great being with you guys today. This is a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks for coming out and being on the first one. You guys have a great day. Everybody out there, have a great day. We'll see you soon.